What is up, people? This is Dedrian Colon, House of Wrestling, and this is my review for the January 10th edition of Monday Night Raw. And as I am going to label this, it is Raw is Quiet. The reason being is because this was in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia historically is known as a rowdy, energetic, enthusiastic wrestling crowd. And tonight, they were very quiet, and honestly, I don't blame them. It's not their fault. Some towns, you're like, maybe it's the crowd, but knowing the history of Philadelphia and just the rabid fan base they have there as far as pro wrestling fans, um, there were moments tonight where some of the fans were chanting during some of the segments. Boring, you heard it audibly. Um, Others were booing. They were just like, all right. And that's what happens when it's a 3-hour program and most of it's talking, promos, segments, backstage segments, videos, all that. And most of you know most of my reviews are just basically a synopsis because one, I am not going to go into detail. And two, I am not going into detail of Monday Night Raw because that is a whole nother multiverse there, if you want to call it that. But tonight it was surprising. And it's one thing that I've noticed about a lot of WWE events lately. I noticed it at New Day, or Day One. Sorry, New Day, Day One. The Day One pay-per-view on Saturday. It was in Atlanta, and Atlanta, again, another city that historically is a wrestling town. The wrestling fans, they enjoy it, they love it. You know, they're rowdy. Throughout the whole pay-per-view, just quiet. People just sitting there, a few people cheer and stuff like that. It's one of the challenges of sitting and watching a WWE program. Sometimes it's like that for SmackDown, but the good thing is because it's 2 hours, it goes through quicker. But yeah, it's something I've noticed with WWE programming. It's one of the challenges why it's hard to sit through there, and it's probably maybe one of the major reasons why it's the ratings are going down because as a wrestling fan, you know, if you're watching, you draw off what the crowd is reacting to, which you in turn as a viewer, you're like, oh man, this is pretty cool. Oh man, I want to see more of this. But if they're not reacting, then what compels you to sit and watch the wrestling that's there? Nothing. So yeah, it was I honestly I don't blame the Philadelphia crowd. Historically, I know how they are. And I'm sorry, one of the major drawbacks of tonight is with the momentum that WWE built on Friday with the announcement of Mickie James, the Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion, that she would be in there, and them tweeting that she is the Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion and she will be participating in the Royal Rumble. All that momentum that they built over the weekend, you would think they would build on it, and this is a recurring theme with WWE that the moment they build momentum, somehow they just like sit on it. They don't kill it. They don't advance it. They just sit on it. And tonight was a perfect example. Pretty much they replayed the video that was on SmackDown announcing the participants in the Women's Royal Rumble, and that was pretty much it. Outside of that, most of the heels tonight won every match, which I think that added to it. Again, one of the other things about Monday Night Raw is that the build up to anything that has stakes is very flat. There's no sense of urgency that's being portrayed on TV to captivate you as a viewer. It's just, oh, a match, okay. The Alpha Academy, they're the new Raw Tag Team Champions. They beat RK Bro, so that might be leading towards a split between Randy Orton and Matt Riddle, where both men probably will participate in the Royal Rumble, which possibly could lead to either one of them throwing the other out in the Royal Rumble, leading to a WrestleMania match, which saw that a long time ago. The Dirty Dogs with Apollo beats Damian Priest and the Street Profits, another tag team that, as you can see if you watch regularly, it's I don't know what WWE's doing with that team. They need to be doing more creative with them. Seth Rollins, which is this one, it's not surprising, but it's surprising who he beat cleanly. Seth Rollins pinned Big E, no distraction, no straight up, which as a viewer and as a fan of WWE, it's concerning because they have the habit of they'll have a popular wrestler go on a losing streak, then in a moment that is for high stakes, they win, and then they book them like loss win, loss win, loss win, loss win, where it's just it confuses you, and you kind of like you don't know if you should get behind them because they're going to lose, and just a lot of stuff that just doesn't. They're putting too much together, so it concerns me because it looks like they're leading towards Big E losing for the next couple of weeks up until Royal Rumble, and it looks like he's probably going to win the men's Royal Rumble, which he should win it, and he should be main eventing WrestleMania. Omos, he won a squash match, and then somehow he got into an issue with Reggie and Dana Brooke for the WWE 24/7 title and mentioned a threat of what he's going to do to, I think it was AJ. I don't know. It was just very awkward how they executed it. And one thing I do want to make clear that most of the issues with Raw, I do not blame any wrestler, because I know that they're getting scripts from creative to read, and that some of it they do have input, but most of it is them being given a script to portray a character where they don't have the flexibility to be themselves and have something be more natural, where it's more segmented, almost like a TV show. There you go. But it is a TV show, but it comes off very cookie cutter. Austin Theory, he defeated AJ Styles with the help of Grayson Waller, which sets up the match for tomorrow night on NXT 2.0. It is what it is. I tweeted something that most people didn't catch, and it caught my eye right away, is that WWE's probably going to miss the boat. If you look at it, Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, they could be a pretty cool tag team. They have the look, they have similar gimmicks, and if WWE wasn't so heavy on singles wrestling, you got a possible tag team there that could do something pretty special, but we'll see what happens. And in the main event, in the triple threat match between Doudrop, Bianca Belair, and Liv Morgan, Doudrop surprisingly wins after losing her last few matches, which now she is set to take on Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship at the Royal Rumble. Didn't see that coming. None of it makes sense. And the way Doudrop is portraying herself, they should just give her name the Piper Niven game back, because Doudrop was more so a name when they brought her up and put her with Eva Marie, which is no longer with the company. So you might as well just give her Piper Niven back, because that's who she's acting like, not Doudrop, not a sidekick. She's a threat. But yeah, those were the winners, and again, it was all heels. Then you had the Alexa Bliss segment where she was meeting with a therapist, and she's back to being supernatural Alexa Bliss. That was with the Fiend. And yeah, doesn't make sense. She's supernatural, and why is she seeing a therapist? Doesn't make sense. she threw a bunch of stuff around and he ran away, and that was the entirety of the segment. Again, it's move on from the supernatural stuff. Alexa Bliss is more creative than just being typecast as a supernatural wrestling character. She could do more. Outside of that, you had the Hurt Business, which it was announced in a backstage segment between Cedric Alexander, Seltzer, and Benjamin, and Bobby Lashley with MVP that the Hurt Business are no more. Put them together a couple months ago. All the Hurt Business this, Hurt Business that, and yeah, they're no more. So they've broken up twice in 1 year. Why? Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Mind you, after all this, I haven't even gone to the rest of it. After all this, now it makes sense, and I understand why this Philadelphia crowd was quiet, because none of this made sense. Outside of that, you had Nikki A.S.H turn on Rhea Ripley, and this was a very predictable, yet awkward, yet very lethargic breakup. And again, I don't put this on any of the performers, Rhea Ripley or Nikki A.S.H, because they were killing it in NXT. Nikki A.S.H, when she was Nikki Cross, was killing it when Insanity, dope. But this stuff was very boring, and this was the segment where you heard a few people in the Philadelphia crowd chant boring, 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 and there was just this awkward silence to get to the execution of Nikki A.S.H turning on Rhea Ripley. Yeah, it could have been done a lot better. There could have been a lot more points to get to. Like, it could have been more concise. It was just very long, tedious. Just, you're sitting there like, okay, who's going to turn on who? Like, we know somebody's going to turn. Who's going to turn on who? All right, where are we going? And Nikki A.S.H turns on Rhea Ripley, and Ashley leaves the ring. She's like, you know what? Superheroes don't need friends. So I guess she's in the same universe as Cody Rhodes as far as Homelander. So, but yeah, this breakup, I mean, you saw this a mile away. They weren't doing anything as the Raw Tag Team Champions. They barely defended the championships for 3-4 months. So, again, this doesn't make sense. A few people online on Twitter have mentioned for the past few months that it was a mistake for them to introduce the NXT Tag Team Champions because it cut off the women's tag teams for floating around Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. But knowing WWE and how they want to keep NXT separate from Raw and SmackDown, you get this issue where realistically there is no entrance. Like, even the tag team champions were on the show, Selena and Carmella. They barely have any women's tag teams because there's barely any women because they released them. So that's why they're bringing in a lot of these legends like Lita, Summer Rae, Kelly, Mickie James, Michelle McCool. That's why they're bringing them back, because there's no women to wrestle other women on the roster. Yeah, so the Omos segment with Reggie and Dana Brooke, go back and look at it. It reminded me, it was almost like a copy of the Harland Brian Kendrick segment that happened a couple weeks ago, where Harland wound up throwing Brian Kendrick down the stairs in NXT. It was like identical, like nothing different. It was like, oh, that's what happened to Harland with Brian Kendrick. Oh, okay. Yeah. Then you had the Edge, the cutting edge segment between Edge and Beth Phoenix. And I do got to say, kudos to Edge. Every time he comes out, he comes out at the right time, because before he comes out, seems like the show is just like lethargic. It's flat. It's just going through the motions, and every time he comes out and his music hits, that gives the crowd like this jolt of energy, excitement. It wakes the crowd up, and it's like, okay, now we got some energy here. It was a cool segment between him and his wife Beth Phoenix and The Miz and Maurice. Really cool feud. I wish they would have put this segment a little bit earlier in the show instead of towards the end of the show, because it would have helped keep the energy from the beginning segment, which was Brock and the confrontation between Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman and Bobby Lashley and MVP. It would have kept that momentum and just that energy throughout the show. But yeah, that was a pretty cool segment. Looking forward to this match at the Royal Rumble, see how this goes. It's fun. You could tell that with the veterans that are on the roster, especially these four, that there's a composure when they execute their line. Sometimes it goes a little bit too long, but it keeps your attention, which is the main thing you want during a 3-hour show. But it was pretty cool. But yeah, the Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley opening segment was really fun. It was really different to see Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar go back and forth in promos, because usually it's MVP talking and Paul Heyman. But I mean, it was a cool way to start off the road to the Royal Rumble match between Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley. Brock Lesnar gave a line to Bobby Lashley that Bobby Lashley is a Brock Lesnar wannabe. See how that goes. But yeah, it was a really cool segment with those four guys starting off the show. Just the visual of seeing Lesnar and Lashley finally confronting each other, which, again, this should have happened 4 years ago when Bobby Lashley returned. But yeah, WWE is taking too long to get to feuds that the fans want. Like, get to the point already. But yeah, this show, the crowd in Philly was very quiet, and they rightfully so. This show, there was a lot of spots that were very lethargic, flat, very predictable, going through the motions. And again, I am not putting this on any wrestler, but the creative has to do better. We're a few weeks away from Royal Rumble, and you got a big match between Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley and Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins. And again, one of my critiques for Raw, if you follow me on Twitter, is the build-up leading to these marquee matches that have stakes. It's flat. That when you get to the match, you're just like, and then it's like a third of the way through the match, it's like, oh, now you're getting into it, which, proper storytelling, you would get into the match way before the match even started. The build-up would just get you there. But yeah, that is my review for Monday Night Raw for January 10th, 2020. Yeah, there's a reason why it is a challenge to sit through Monday Night Raw. And if you're watching this and you're just like, oh my God, I can't sit through Raw, I understand. And honestly, I can't wait till the day that when they renew their contract with USA or what have you, that Raw goes back to 2 hours, because it is desperately needed. This 3 hours is too long for they can't do it for 3 hours. They're stretched, and they can't do it. Keep it to 2 hours, please, WWE. Again, this is Dedrian Colon, House of Wrestling. Like, share, comment this video. Follow us on all social media platforms. Follow me on TikTok at Dedrian180. Yes, this is Raw is Quiet, the review. Peace.